Hey, I'm in my friend's apartment in Boston where I'm staying. They're so generous to let me stay when I come up here to teach, and the light is obviously amazing, so I wanted to take advantage of it and make this video. And it's about the paradox of privilege. And I've written about this before, actually have blog posts or other videos or in Instagram posts or something where I've talked about this a lot, but just because I share doesn't mean people always see it, so it's worth repeating. And the paradox of privilege that I've come to see is that it's actually a liability. Because when we have so much privilege and we have a certain amount of privilege, which I'll explain about in a minute, it keeps us from really ever encountering and feeling the level of gratitude that is lasting. It's not to say that if you have privilege that you never feel gratitude. In fact, I hope that you do, because you have a lot of privilege, so you should feel grateful for it. But the paradox of it is that because by its very nature, it keeps us buffered and keeps us kind of as a cocoon, it really prevents us from really ever suffering at such a deep or profound level that would help us encounter and experience a really deep level of gratitude that we could draw from and call up whenever we needed when we were feeling struggling, when we were feeling like we're struggling. And gratitude, I find, is like the best medicine to struggling. Those moments of existential like crisis, like, why am I here? What am I doing this for? I always, when I'm having those moments, which I do, I just bring in gratitude. And also, my relationship to gratitude is very, very different now than it was before I reconciled my privilege. So when I say reconciled my privilege, in my past, I had a lot more privilege than I have now, but I didn't appreciate it. And the reason I didn't appreciate it was because we rarely appreciate what just is obvious. It's like the water that we swim in. And I like to think of privilege kind of like toilet paper that's stuck on your shoe. It's there and you don't know it's there, but other people who don't have toilet paper stuck on their shoe are aware that you do. And so it's something that's obvious to other people, but it's not obvious to you. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And it doesn't mean that it's not obvious to other people. And in some instances, people might need the very thing that you have, but you're not aware that you have it, so it's not even something for you to feel grateful for. That's kind of like high-level privilege conversation. And a lot of people these days, particularly in the activist world or like liberal progressives, they really like to make people with more privilege, there's a narrative of making those people feel really guilty, or that they should feel bad, or that they're bad people because they have more privilege. Often it's like financial privilege or identity privilege, related to race or sexual orientation or gender expression or identity. And I went through that phase. I used to be that person. I still have those thoughts from time to time just because it's old conditioning. It was like such a part of my life and such a part of who I was that I have to remember that I'm not that anymore, and I'm not in that narrative, and I don't think that way. But parts of my brain still go there. But the place that I'm at now about reconciling your privilege, it's not about that you should feel bad about it. It's not about feeling guilty, or it's not even about not having it anymore and surrendering it and, for instance, giving away all of your money so that you don't have financial privilege anymore. But it's more about you getting clear about what you do have, and then being responsible for how that positions you compared to other people. And I kind of make an analogy to like animals. All animals are animals, but a giraffe isn't the same thing as a meerkat. They're two different things. They have two different ways of living in the world, different pros and cons, different privileges are afforded them based on their existence. But they're all animals, right? So I like to think of that with people too. Like, we're all people and we have all kinds of different things. And it's important to see that and be aware of it and to be able to name it and have language and talk about it, because not talking about it doesn't mean that it's not real. So this came up last night in the class where the theme was thrive in your 9-to-5, but all the people in attendance were complaining about these jobs that they have. And at first, for someone who's been doing freelance for 10 years, I'm listening to these people who have these full-time jobs complaining, and I'm just thinking, in my mind, I'm just like, oh my God, you have so much to be grateful for, and I can't even believe that you're complaining. But they are complaining. And you know what? I used to be them, because I used to have multiple full-time jobs that I completely took for granted and completely didn't appreciate and lost in certain circumstances, and really didn't even feel the impact of that for years. And so it's because I didn't recognize and reconcile the privilege that I had. And so there was this constant yearning and craving and desiring for more, because there was no way for me to measure and appreciate and value what I had, because I hadn't acknowledged my privilege and reconciled it. And that's the paradox of privilege, is that it actually becomes a liability, because when we have so much, it is so hard to see it, and it's hard to have that deep, profound gratitude that makes us humble, that makes us vulnerable, that allows us to live really authentically and come from a real place of just deep, profound gravity in the world that makes life worth living, instead of just constantly seeking and grasping and wanting more.